Hello guys, welcome to my channel. So today we are going to review how to solve system of equations by elimination method and substitution method. So the reason why we are learning this skill is to get us ready for problems like this. So in geometry, you can be given a shape, and then they give you some details and ask you to prove prove and use properties to establish what you know about that figure. For example, this shape here looks like a rectangle, but we're not very sure yet. It just looks like a rectangle. So, but they're asking us that with the information given, we need to establish a relationship with the side lengths to prove that the shape is a rectangle. Now, for this shape to be a rectangle, uh, we must have some, there's some properties of rectangle that we already know. The opposite sides of a rectangle are congruent. So this is the length, and that will also be the length if this is a rectangle. So the opposite sides will be congruent, meaning that we can actually write an equation here to establish this fact. So we also know from the width that the widths are always congruent. So the width is the same. All right, so meaning that 2x minus 2y will also equal 3. All right, so we have already learned how to solve linear equations or how to solve simple equations and and multi-step equations. So here we're going to use the knowledge from there to solve this problem. But here we have two variables, x and y. That's why this system of equations sometimes can be called simultaneous equation. Okay, because you need to solve for x and y. So there are two variables that you need to solve for at the same time, so x and y. So in order to finish solving this problem here, we are going to use the elimination method. From the word elimination means that we have to eliminate one of the variables because we can't solve this problem here if we have the two variables in the system. So we have to figure out a way to come up with some manipulations, something to solve this problem. Okay, so what we can do here is to observe closely that we have opposite signs here. We have addition and subtraction here, and whenever we have opposite signs, it's easy to look at the variables involved and figure and find a way to cancel out one of the variables, which means eliminating one of the variables. So what we can do here is to pay attention to the variables that are the same. For example, you can see that you have 2y here and you also have 2y here, but then they have opposite signs. So when you have this in this kind of situation, so you will just add up. You add the two equations to each other, and that's how you can easily eliminate one of the variables. So when we do this, then we can add x plus 2x, and that gives us 3x. And then if we add 2y and negative 2y, because they are opposites, they will just cancel out and they become 0. So it will just disappear naturally. So 6 plus 3 as well on the right hand side would be 9. Okay, so now we have 3x is equal to 9. So let's go ahead and just clean it up a little bit and write out what we have. Good. So from here, the y variable is gone. It has been eliminated, but we're going to bring it back later. Okay. All right. So now we need to solve for x right now. So by dividing both sides by 3, we will solve for x. So here, x will be equal to 3 because 9 divided by 3 is 3. All right, x is 3. So, but then where did y go? So we need to bring it back. In order to bring it back, we're going to go back to the first equation. So we can label them as equation 1 and equation 2. So we can go back to any of these two equations and solve for y next, okay? So, but then the easier equation is the first equation because it has x plus 2y, single variable for x. So it's easy to plug in x, all right? So, but we can also use the second equation to solve for y. So since we have x plus 2y is equal to 6, what we can do here is to substitute the value of x for x, which means x equal 3. Here will mean that 3 plus 2y has to be equal to 6. So we're just replacing x by 3. So now we can subtract 3 from both sides. Subtract 3 and subtract 3 here. So when we do that, we cross this out. So we're going to get 2y is equal to 3. Good. And the next step will be to divide both sides by 2, and then y will be equal to, then we're going to cross that out, y will be equal to 1.5, right? So we can write 1.5, or we can just keep it as 3 over 2. So let's go ahead and just put 1.5. All right, so now we have x is 3 and y equals 1.5. So there are different ways to write your final answers. So you can write that in brackets. You put 3, comma 1.5. So this will be your solution to the system of equations. So the solution will be 3, comma 1.5. So the x value comes first, and then the y value is next. So here you can actually check to see, make sure that what you've done is correct. So what you can do here is you just go to this first, the length, which is 3, which is x plus 2y, right? Which is x plus 2y. So you're gonna plug in 3 for x, and then you're gonna add 2 times y. And we know that y is 1.5, so we're gonna plug in 1.5. So which means final result is going to be 3 plus 2 times 1.5 is 3, which is exactly 6. So look, 6 equals 6. So that means the opposite sides are congruent. So let's go ahead and do the width. For the width, we have 2x minus 2y, so we're going to plug in x and y respectively. So the value of the x is 3 minus 2 times the value of y, because we're using this, the value of y will be 1.5. Again, if we plug all of this in the calculator, it'll be 2 times 3 is 6, and 2 times 1.5 will be 3. So 6 minus 3 is 3. So again, we've established that the width here is also 3. So this will be a rectangle. So we have the opposite sides are congruent, but then actually sometimes to prove that a shape is a rectangle, it's not just enough to show that the opposite sides are congruent. We also need to know that one missing key part of this problem here is there has to be a 90-degree here. Okay, we'll have at least a 90-degree here. Okay. So we have a 90-degree here, and we also have a 90-degree here. We know that this is a rectangle. This is very important to mention that to us, because in the future we're going to have to look at this. So now the problem number 2 here, we are going to solve this problem here using substitution method. So substitution method is a little different than elimination. So for substitution method, the first step is to choose one of the equations that you like. So I like equation 1, so I'm going to choose equation 1. So I'm going to choose the equation 1 and then try to isolate one of the variables, because there are 2 variables right there. So I would choose equation 1. So the equation 1 is x plus 2y equal to 6. Now I am going to isolate x because it will be easier for me to isolate x than isolating y. So what I would just do is just move and divide, or move 2y to the other side of the equation, or subtract 2y from both sides. Okay. And we have already learned how to solve equations, and also how to solve formulas. All right. So what we're just doing here is to make x the subject of the formula by isolating x. So we're going to cross 2y out, and then we're left with x is equal to, now we cannot do 6 minus y to simplify to a single expression, so but we'll just write that as 6 minus 2y. And then here we're going to label that as equation 3. All right, now from this equation 3 here, or we put a star on it just to remember that equation, we will take what we have here, this equation, the information we have in this equation here, and plug it into equation 2, because we haven't even used equation 2 the whole time. So whatever you come up with after your isolation needs to go in, okay, in replacement of the isolated variable. It needs to go in. That's what we call substitution. So we're going to substitute this 6 minus 2y for x. We're going to plug it in for x right here. So that's what we're going to do now. So let's drop down to x minus 2y equal to 3. So we are now going to take this 6 minus 2y and use that to replace x. That's what you call substitution. Substitution means to replace, right, with the same value. replace with the same value. So we're going to take this 6 minus 2y and plug it in here. So since we have multiplication here, I would rather just use a parenthesis because the number coming in for x is more than a single expression. So it's not a single expression that I would just use parentheses. So that will be 2x. So 2x now is going to be replaced by 2 times 6 minus 2y. But again, I still have minus 2y here, which I have not yet written. So that's it. And then I have 3 here on the right hand side. This is what you get. So you now have to, rearrange this equation, simplify, and solve for y. So now I'm going to distribute. Use the distribution property. 2 times 6 is 12. 2 times negative 2y is negative 4y. Then I have minus 2y here. And that's going to be equal to 3. So I have 12. Now I'm going to have to combine negative 4y and minus 2y. So altogether, that's going to give us 6y, and that's going to equal 3. So my next move will be to subtract 12 from both sides. Minus 12 and minus 12. Minus 12 and minus 12, so I'm going to cross out this 12. All right, once I cross out this 12, I have negative 6y is going to be equal to 3 minus 12. And 3 minus 12 exactly will give me negative 9. Good. So I am now going to divide both sides by negative 6. So divide by negative 6, divide by negative 6. So cross the negative 6 out, and then you're going to divide two negative numbers, which will exactly become positive. So that means y will be equal to positive 9 over 6. And 9 divided by 6 is 1.5. Because we can reduce this fraction here by dividing 9 by 3 and 6 by 3. So if we do that, it would lead to 2/3. I mean, three halves. 3 halves. We take that back. So it would lead to 3 halves. So what I mean is this. You can divide 9 by 3 and divide 6 by 3 to reduce the fraction. 9 divided by 3 will be 3, and 6 divided by 3 will be 2, which exactly works with what we had here. So if you look, I'll show you, go back here. You see, that was the same thing we got when we used elimination method, right? You see, so which is actually 1.5 as well if we wanted to use 1.5. So that means y also is 1.5. So now, since we have y, we can go back and solve for x. So where should we go now? Let me use green to direct you. So we are going to plug in 1.5 now for y here. See, this is the third equation. So we started from equation 1 and navigated to equation 3. From equation 3, we navigated back to equation 2. Now that we're done with equation 2 and we've been able to solve the value of or y to be 1.5, we're going to take this 1.5 here and plug it in for y in equation 3. So for equation 3, we know that x equals 6 minus 2y. So we're now going to take this 1.5 and plug that in for y. So that means x will be equal to 6 minus 2 times, since we found y to be 1.5, we're going to plug that in. So x equals 6 minus, we have 2 times 1.5 will be 3. So therefore, x is going to be 6 minus 3, which is equal to 3. So now we have the answers to what we're working. All right, so that means x equals 3 and y equals 1.5. And we can as well write the answer like this. And we have been able to check that the solution is correct. All right, so this is how you solve problems like this one. So we're going to go ahead and also try more. So let's look at these problems here. For this problem here, we're going to need to use the elimination method here. But the problem here is that, one thing I can see here is that the variables are not the same. They don't, for example, I have x plus 2y equals 6 and I have 2x minus y equals 6. So you can see when we compare, we have 1x here and we have 2x here. We cannot just easily cross them out. It's not easy to subtract or add them to make them zeros. So here we have 2y, positive 2y, here we have negative 1y. So I'm going to put 1 here. for example. So you see, so we cannot just add them up and just to eliminate something. It's not going to work. So the first thing we're going to do here is think about how we can multiply with a good factor. Okay, multiply any of the equations with something to make one of the variables equal to each other. So since I have opposite signs, I'm looking to make sure that this single y here is doubled. If it's doubled, then it will be exactly equal to the positive 2y over there. And then I can cross them out. All right, so I am going to do this by multiplying this equation 2. All right, I'm going to multiply the equation 2 by 2 to make this happen. It's just a trick. Okay, so it could be something else. You can try to eliminate x by multiplying equation 1 by 2 as well. That way you have 2x and 2x to compare. So I am going to multiply equation 2 by 2. So if I do that, this is what I'm going to get. 2 times 2x will be 4x. You got to multiply everything, okay? So 2 times negative y will be negative 2y. And 2 times 2 will be 4. So now equation 2 has been, transformed to look like 4x to be 4x minus 2y equal to 4. So this is the equivalent. These two equations are equivalent. All right. So now because they are equivalent, so we can actually rewrite that as equation 1 as x plus 2y equal to 6, which was equation 1, and I'm going to write the equivalent equation for equation 2, which is 4x minus 2y is equal to 4. And that's the one I just manipulated, and it becomes equation 3, or you can just put a star on it, right? Because I changed it a little bit. So now that we have the same variables and opposite signs, what we can do is just add the two equations. So just add. Now, x plus 4x is 5x. Positive 2y plus negative 2y, that's a 0. 6 plus 4 is 10. So I'm just going to rewrite it like this. So take off the 0 and bring the positive 10 a little closer so I can see what I'm dealing with. So now to solve this type of equation, I would just divide both sides by what? By 5. Okay, that means 5x divided by 5 will be equal to 10 divided by 5. So I can cross 5 and 5 out, and then I'll be left with x equal to 2. 10 divided by 5 is 2. All right, so now we have the value of x, so we need to calculate for y. So to solve for y, you can actually decide on which equation you want. You can choose equation 1 or 2 or 3, whichever one. So, but maybe we should just make do with the first equation where we have, so when we have x plus 2y equals 6. From here, I would just take this 2 here and throw it in for x, substitution. So when I substitute 2 for x in equation 1, I can easily calculate y. So I'm going to plug in 2 for x and then keep everything else the same. So I'm going to subtract 2 on both sides and cross this out. Then I'm left with 2y is equal to 4. And then all I have to do here is divide both sides by 2 and cross that 2 out, and y will finally be equal to 2. So in this case here, the solution to this problem will be x equal to and y equal to, or you can just write it as 2 comma 2 in brackets like that. All right, so finally we are going to solve the same problem using elimination method. So to use the elimination method, I'm going to call this equation 1 and this equation as 2. All right, so next thing I'm going to do here is I will just isolate one of the variables. So I'm going to choose this equation 1 because I have a single variable x and that x is positive, so it's easier. Or I could choose equation 2, but it might not be very easy to isolate y because it's negative here. All right, so now I have x plus 2y equals 6, right? So I am going to subtract I need to isolate this x, right? So I'm subtracting 2y on both sides. Both sides, so I cross this out. And now we're left, so let me use red still. I'm left with x equal to 6 minus 2y. And this is the equation you can call equation 3. Or you can just put a star on it and just leave it there. We're going to come back to this equation. So always remember to come back here. So we are going to have to come back to this equation. So let me write come back. Or you can just say return. Okay, so we're going to return to this equation later to solve for x. So now we're going to keep this value and we're going to use this value to replace x in equation 2 because we haven't even touched equation 2 before. So look at equation 2 right there. So let's go ahead and bring down that equation 2 and work with that. So 2x minus y equal to 2 is equation 2, right? Okay, so now I'm going to plug in this 6 minus 2y here for x. So in order to do that, I will have to use parentheses or brackets, okay? So I'm going to plug in 6 minus 2y, all right, in there for x. So that's what I've done, you see? So minus, then y is still there, and then 2 is still there. So I'm going to need to now clear the brackets by distributing. Okay, 2 times 6 is 12, minus 2 times 2y is going to be 4y. And then I have minus y, which is outside parentheses, so I need to be very careful. All right, so I'm just repeating everything else. So now I'm going to leave y alone, 12 alone, and just combine the like terms. So minus 4y minus y would be minus 5y. Remember how we combine a situation like this, so it's addition. So you're adding two negative numbers. We're not multiplying, so it's not going to be positive. So I'm going to drop my 12, and that's going to be 2. So what I'm going to need to do here is I am going to need to uh, subtract 12 from both sides. Subtract 12 and subtract 12. Cross that out. So I'm going to write down what I have left is equal to 2 minus 12. Be careful not to do positive 10. All right, so 2 minus 12 is negative 10. And we're going to divide both sides by negative 5, okay? Negative 5. So we're going to cross out the negative 5s, and we're going to be left with, finally, y, which is equal to negative 10 divided by negative 5. So two negative numbers dividing each other. So the final answer will be positive 2. Remember we said we're going to return to something. So we haven't calculated x completely yet. So we're going to return back here. So that's what we said. We promised. So we're now going to fulfill our promise. So 6 minus 2y. That's where we're returning to. So you know now y is 2. So we found y to be equal to 2. So we're going to take that 2 and plug that in for y. So that means x is equal to 6 minus 2y. Y we're going to use a bracket, a parenthesis. So we're going to plug in 2 over there. Okay. So that means x will be equal to 6 minus 4. That means x equal to 6 minus 4 is going to be 2. See, so now we got x and y. So, but first, for substitution, we were able to solve for y first, and then x. But for elimination, we were able to solve for x first. But I want you to realize and understand that it does not matter which variable you solve for first. So you know sometimes you will be able to conveniently solve for x first and then y, or if it's possible to solve for y first, why not? So there is no order, okay? So you could you know there's no uh, you know, some people would say since you have x, then y, you always have to find x first and then finding y. So no, there's no order in finding the variables. You can find y first. You can choose to find x first, depending on which one is convenient for you. So I'm happy to work with you on this. I hope that uh, these lessons will continue to get better, and our review would help us really to get ready for your geometry classes. Okay, so go ahead and subscribe if you have not, and try to watch the videos, my previous videos. You'll find them on this channel if you subscribe, and they're all in a playlist and it's easy for you to follow. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.